Hey guys, so today we're gonna be learning how to create this cool product reveal effect in geometry nodes. So let's get started. So first what we need is 3D model of any product that you want to reveal. So here I have a 3D model of a product. I joined all the pieces of it to one mesh, and then I'm gonna duplicate this one and rename it to the effect, because we're gonna overlay it on top of the real clean geometry of the product. So in the effect, I'm gonna add a remesh modifier to remesh the geometry to something that we can work with. So I'm gonna bring down the voxel size, and then I'm going to apply the modifier. And yeah, make sure to use 3.4 alpha because this effect will not work in any lower version of Blender. Then I'm gonna go to the edit mode and hit Alt S to scale everything along the normals up a little bit, and hit M to merge by distance. Now why am I doing this? Because I want to make the geometry a little bit interesting for the new shortest path node in Blender. Then I'm gonna go to face and poke faces, and after that you can just select vertices randomly, hit O for the proportional editing, and rotate it from the view just like that. Make sure to not mess up the geometry a lot, and then I'm just gonna randomize the vertices a little bit so that we get some interesting pattern here. Then create a new geometry node 3, and this is gonna be the revealing. First I'm gonna add a merge by distance node. Bring it up a little bit, just like that. So now I'm gonna add an edge paths to curve node, and these are new nodes recently added, so I won't go in detail. We're just making the effect here. So in the start vertices, I'm gonna add an shortest edge paths, and this end vertices, I'm going to connect that to this black dot here, and then I'm going to go to the edit mode, select one vertex right here because this is going to be our start where the effect starts and grows up the whole mesh. I'm going to create a new vertex group here and assign it, get out of the edit mode, and in this geometry nodes modifier I'm going to select our group here. So the end vertex is starting from this group right now, and then right here in the edge cost I'm going to add a vector math, and I'm going to set it to distance. Then I'm going to add another node which is the edge vertices, connect the position 1 to the vector and position 2 to the vector 2. I'm going to hide our clean geometry because we don't need it right now. And why isn't it working? Yes, because we've connected the next vertex index to the start vertices. We need to connect that to the next vertex index right here, and we can play with the merge by distance a little bit. And yeah, I'm just gonna frame these, hit Ctrl J, and now I'm gonna add a curve to mesh node, curve to mesh, and then I'm gonna merge it by distance because we have a lot of mess here but we can't actually see it. Then after that I'm just going to add a mesh to curve again. Then I'm going to add a set spline type node, set spline type, and another set handle type. Then in the spline type I'm going to select Bezier, so it's very smooth right now. You can see the difference. When it's Bezier, it's smoother. And now before the set handle type node, I'm just going to add a set spline cyclic, and I'm going to make it cyclic. So it makes some kind of rings right here, which I like a lot. Then I'm going to add a set curve radius node, set curve radius, and first in the radius I'm going to add a float curve. I'm just gonna add a value right here in the middle and bring this one down right here. And in the value right here I'm just gonna add a spline parameter and connect the factor to the value. Then I'm going to add a math node here and set this math node to multiply. So let's add a curve to mesh node again to give it some geometry, and in the profile curve I'm gonna add a line, a curve line. Set the end to 0 right here and find the value that works for you. So the x is kind of opposite, so I'm gonna try the z axis or the y axis. I think the y works for me. And for better report performance, I'm going to add a resample curve node and resample this to something like 100. That's good. So in the multiply right here, I'm going to make a controller now. Click this pin button to pin it so that if we add another cube or anything else here, geometry node 3 will always be here. I'm just going to bevel these scale Shift Z, remove the upper and the bottom face, X delete, scale Z axis, apply scale, go to the object properties, and in the viewport display I'm gonna make it bounce. Now rename it to controller and import it to the geometry nodes, and in the geometry I'm gonna add a proximity node, geometry proximity, and I'm gonna connect the distance to the multiply. So now when we move it, it's kind of playing with the radius of this curve, so that's pretty cool. Now to manipulate the value of this proximity a little bit, I'm just gonna add a map range here. Hook that up right here, and to invert the map range, just gotta invert these values, so to minimum to 1 and to maximum from 1 to 0. These values are inverted now. I'm just gonna play with these till I get something I like. And now if I move this, it looks like that. I'm just going to frame these nodes, select these and frame them with Ctrl J. I'm just going to add a set position node to randomize these wires kind of things a little bit, and in the offset I'm gonna add a vector map. I'm gonna set it to multiply, and then right here after the merge by distance node I'm gonna add an attribute, which is the transfer attribute. Connect this to the source and set it from float to vector, and in the attribute I'm gonna add a normal node, and I'm going to set it to the nearest. Now get this attribute and connect it to the multiply, and right here just going to add a noise texture, and before the noise texture just going to add a subtract node and subtract 0.5. Then after the subtract node I'm just gonna duplicate it and set it to scale and bring down the scale of the effect. Then I'll bring down the detail to 0 and the scale down, just like that, and bring the scale of the whole effect down a little bit. So now we got some randomness here. I'm going to set the noise to 40, and in the W I'm going to add a scene time node to animate it. Now if I apply this, it's very fast, so I can add a map node and multiply it with a smaller number. It will be slow now. It looks boring right now, but trust me, it's gonna look very good in the final render. Now you can play with this merge by distance node a little bit. I'm gonna set it to something like 0.14 or something. Yeah, this looks cool. I'm gonna hit tab, I'm gonna select my effect object and hit tab, select everything, and Alt S to scale it up a little bit along the normals. Now we want to add materials, so add a set material node and select the material here. So I'm going to add a new material and rename it to the reveal, and then I'm just gonna add an emission here and select the reveal effect right here. Then I'm going to the shading tab, unpin this, and now right here add a geometry node, and then we have one input right here, which is the random per island, and it works pretty good if you want to add some randomness to the objects. Then I'm just gonna add a hue saturation node and connect this to the hue. Choose a color here and go to the rendered or the shading view. I think it only works with the cycles, so I'm gonna select my controller, create a new material, which is gonna be, and I'm gonna name it to hide, and then right here in the surface I'm gonna add a transparent BSDF, so it will always be hidden. You can just bring that up and it's gonna look like that. Although the effect is still not perfectly fine, but we're gonna fix that soon. So we're getting this cool kind of wires right here, which is a very cool effect. Let me bring that back just a little bit. So we want to hide the product too with a gradient kind of thing, and when it moves the product is like revealing and these wires are showing up on the revealing area. So let's do that too. So select the product, whatever material you have, go to the shading tab, add a mix shader node, and in the second shader I'm gonna add a transparent BSDF because we want to hide the second one, so we use the transparent here. And in the factor I'm just gonna add a gradient texture, and I'm gonna group this one because if you have an object and it has like 2 or 3 materials, we can always just duplicate this group and reuse it for the other materials. So I'm gonna group that and disconnect this for now. In the vector, I'm gonna add a texture coordinate node, and I'm just gonna connect the object to the vector. Then I'm gonna add a separate XYZ node and connect the Z to the vector. So you can see we got something here. I'm gonna pin this and select our controller and bring it up and down. You can see we're getting some invisibility effect here. You can also see we got some issues and some clipping with there is some black kind of annoying thing here with the transparency, and there's a fix for this. You can go to the render properties and in the light paths bring up the transparent to something like 20, and now it should be fixed. And if you're using Eevee, you can go to the material settings and in the viewport display set the blending mode to alpha blend, and this effect will work for Eevee too. So now you can see the whole effect looks very good. We didn't select the object, so the gradient is not moving with it. So I'm gonna select our controller in the texture coordinate node, and now if I move the controller, everything moves with it. Now right here, just gonna add a mix RGB node, and I'm gonna set it to multiply and set the factor to 1, and in the color tree I'm gonna add a noise texture and connect the object coordinates to the vector right here of the noise. And if I preview this noise, it's gonna look like that. Bring down the detail to 0, and I'm gonna add a mapping node for that. And in the mapping node, I'm gonna animate the Z location of this. So hash frame and divided by some number so it is slower. If you divide it by a negative number, it's gonna be going the other direction then. So I'm gonna divide the frame by -50. Preview everything. I think I need to add this multiply node before the separate XYZ and connect the factor of the noise to the color too. And you can see in this texture coordinate node we have the object selected, so I'm gonna just duplicate it and remove the object from here and connect the object to the mapping right here. So I want this to work from bottom, not the top, so I'm gonna rotate this cube along the x-axis 180 degrees, rx 180. Now it's inverted. If you want this gradient to be a little bit upper, you can add a vector math here. So this is x and this is y and this is z. So in the z axis, I'm just gonna bring this value up a little bit, just like that, and bring this factor down just a little bit. Now if I bring it down, the revealing effect looks very good. Play the animation and see how that looks like. Now there might be a little bit of glitches here, but don't worry, we're gonna fix them. So in the reveal effect in the emission, I'm gonna bring up the strength of it to something like 3 or 5. You can always change the color from here. And then in the geometry node, now you can see the effect is not very smooth here, so this is because of this map range. I'm gonna set this from linear to smoother step, and now if I bring it up or down, it's gonna be a lot smoother, but still it doesn't look very good. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set this distance to something like 0.15 and this one to 0.01, and right here I'm gonna bring this up a little bit. So it doesn't look very smooth right now, so I'm just gonna add a add node right here and add 0.4 here. Play around with the values until you get something that you are looking for. You can see now if I move my cube, it's gonna reveal the product. You can apply this to any product. First you have to make the mesh for these wires and then apply the material. It's just a simple gradient. Then I'm gonna select our effect and go to the object properties, and in the visibility I'm going to turn off the shadow because we don't want it to make shadows. I'm going to go to the colors and color management and set the look to high contrast, and yeah, that's basically the whole effect. It works with the controller just like that. Now you can see it's a very amazing effect. You just reveal any object with that and have fun with it. Now you can get this project file from my Patreon if you don't want to do all the complex node stuff here, and just download it and use it for your own project. So that's it for today, and I'll see you in my next tutorial.